This podcast is sponsored by Lightens. Lightens, your best source for OE quality automotive and heavy-duty accessory drive tensioning devices. We know tensioners because we invented them.
So, Kath, I think I don't know about literally, but I think I've known you most of my life. I remember you always there. And I think I know your story, but I'd love, for the benefit of those listening or watching, how did you get started? What was your first job in the aftermarket? How did it all begin?
Well, when I was growing up as a kid in South Buffalo, I always wanted to work in the automotive aftermarket.
Who doesn't?
Not really, not at all. My first job in the business was as a back of the book product report writer for your father, and he was really, really, really impactful to me as a person, as a leader, and he gave me plenty of opportunities to goof up, and he showed me the way. But I began writing product releases in a bullpen of folks with typewriters, and we would send the type hot to the printer. It was a long time ago. It was a lot of technology ago. The thing about the aftermarket is that I think it's sort of the largest unknown industry in America, and yet it's ubiquitous. When you drive around, it's everywhere. And it's been so resilient, and it's been so important to the mobility of this country and every other country that it's the Henny Youngman of industries.
Absolutely. And so I know you and my dad were close, and he always spoke very fondly of you, and I suspect that he was a mentor to you. And I'm sure that you had other mentors in the aftermarket throughout your career, those folks who weighed in and helped and assisted and gave you counsel, maybe a lot of them, right?
A ton, almost everybody. As you became closer to acquaintances and clients and customers, I think that, we relied on each other for support, for inspiration, for a cocktail.
So, Kath, I know Babcox Media was lucky to have you as part of the team for a long time, 30 years or so. And I know then you went on to the Auto Care Association, and just talk a little bit about that and your experience in Washington and what you learned there and what your thoughts about that experience were.
What I learned there really was the power of associations, regardless of industry, the power of people working together to accomplish so much more than any one person or small group of people could. But it was wonderful. I loved Washington. It was very exciting. Never 2 days the same, of course. And it was a lot of fun and great restaurants.
And did you ever find yourself in the White House?
I did go to the White House a couple of times. I was lucky enough to be invited to the White House for one of the Christmas events, and I'll never forget it. It was fabulous.
So, Kath, biggest mistake. Did you ever make a mistake in business?
Oh gosh!
And how did you overcome it?
I think, not to seem petty, but the worst mistake I ever made was wearing new shoes to the show. It was like 4 days of absolute pain and torture, and that was a terrible lesson. I certainly wasn't at my best, and it was so firm. I've never made that mistake again, and told everybody I could see that when planning for the show, that is the first rule of all, is, wear comfortable shoes, get them shined up or whatever, but don't wear new shoes.
So, Kath, speaking of Vegas, any like funny moments, any highlights, any crazy dinners, anything you remember and laugh about or think about?
They were all great. The highlight for me was that person of the year at the AWDA cocktail party, the best cocktail party of the industry. And, and I was very, very pleased and moved and humbled by all that. That'll be the best night I can remember in Vegas.
Yeah, well, that is a well-deserved recognition, Kath.
Oh, that was a big deal. There were so many friends there, so that was the best.
Kath, you've always been a voracious reader and a lifelong learner, right? I know that's one of the things you've kind of lived by. You talk about people who maybe mentored you, and I know that's one of the things I learned from you always at a young age. You just got to make sure you keep learning and keeping up with information. And I'm not surprised you're continuing to do that, right?
I think I need more learning more than ever now. Things are moving pretty fast, changing pretty fast. I have grandsons. It's kind of impossible to keep up with them, especially in technology. Luckily they still like to spend some time with me. I know that won't last forever, but
right.
It's a joy to be around them, and that's what my retirement's been all about.
So, Kath, any game-changing moments in your career?
No.
Any flashpoints?
I think very fondly. I remember very fondly the years that Babcox was adding titles when we were creating magazines. Creating aftermarket news, creating import car. I remember import car, the technology in vehicles was changing greatly especially with import vehicles, and much like the EV discussions of today. But they were talking about like electronic fuel injection and McPherson struts, and the industry will never be able to keep up, and it's ever changing, and people will only go to the dealers for repairs. None of it was true, of course. The aftermarket has always been resilient. I think certainly the aftermarket will use training to its very best advantage, and will address the EV aftermarket in the same kind of enthusiasm and with the same kind of technical confidence. But those years when we were adding underhood service and import car and aftermarket news. It was like almost one a year, and it was so exciting. It was fabulous. And Counterman and introducing, that whole concept of being customer facing and it was very, very exciting and entrepreneurial, and it was a blast.
So, Kath, best advice or some of the best advice you've ever been given from personal or business, from a parent or a friend or a mentor? Anything you kind of keeping top of mind?
Well, I'll tell you a story about your dad. He talked about a businessman goes to a diner and orders a cup of coffee, and he drops a sugar cube in it, and he tastes it, and he tells the waitress coffee is still bitter. And so he puts another sugar cube in it, tastes it, still doesn't like it, still doesn't taste good. So he gets the waitress over, and he says, this doesn't taste well. And so she says to him, stir it up. And that has always stuck with me, as you can tell.
Yeah.
So now at 71 years old, I still remember that. the whole idea, stir it up, think about it a different way, talk to different people, put it down and go back to it later. It's just such solid, practical, thoughtful advice. Just stir it up. And usually you'll find at least a decent solution.
Lots of chances to stir it up.
Well, there are lots of chances to stir it up, like the women's board.
Yep.
That came out of just a couple of ideas. When the research showed that women influence automotive service purchases more than half of the time, and it was obvious that the industry wasn't female facing in any way, and there were so few women that it just made sense to band together, talk about ways to talk and communicate to women about automotive repair, and then also let's have some fun along the way. And it's really grown, and it's been so good for the industry because there's so many more women in, and it's not sexist or feminist. It just made sense. They're creative, smart, fun women who certainly have made this industry a better one in every way.
Yeah, Kath, you're right in the forefront of all of that. And a lot of women had followed in your footsteps. In fact, thanks to you and a handful of others, right? A handful of others and you kind of paved the way for a lot of women to come into the business.
And it's a great business, and the business is better for it. And we're better for our customers.
Absolutely.
With that. So it just its time was right. So and it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to think about and watch it grow.
So Kath, I know you're sort of kind of retired, I guess, but I know you keep up. So I'm just kind of curious, what's your take on EVs? Is the aftermarket prepared? When does EV become a kind of a meaningful part of the marketplace?
Well, I think it'll be 10 years before it's a meaningful part of the marketplace. The aftermarket will certainly be ready. Training's required now. I have a hybrid vehicle now, and I'm looking forward to an electric one. But there's going to be a lot of gas engines out on the roads. So the technician of the future, I think, is going to have to specialize in whatever that powertrain is. And, much like the beginning of the import vehicles, where those technicians specialize, some of them in vehicles of country of origin. Yeah. It's a lot of technology. So I think the shop owner of the future will hire a series of specialists. So, are we ready yet? Of course not. But will we be? Of course we will. The industry has always been able to respond to technology. And I look forward to that. And when you look at the demographics of the country and the growing importance of trade schools and technology, that we will be ready. But the only way to be ready is to begin now, to prepare in small ways. I think it's exciting, but I don't think it's an impediment to the business at all. It's certainly an opportunity for the new folks.
I think you're right. And I think that the aftermarket always reacts, always responds, and there's time to prepare here. It's on the horizon, and people are going to be ready for it.
I think there's plenty of time. Not that 8-10 years doesn't go fast. It does. But I do think there's plenty of time.
So, Kath, we've covered a lot of ground today. And is there anything that you would like to touch upon or comment upon?
Bill, in thinking about this event, there certainly is something I did want to comment on if I could, and
Please.
that is, I spent my entire career at two places.
Yeah.
And I know that is not the norm, especially for some of the younger colleagues and the younger workers. You don't need to make a move to get ahead, to grow personally and professionally in your career necessarily. Obviously, if you hate where you are, make a move. But if you love the leadership and if you like your colleagues, it's up to you to invent ways to challenge yourself to grow where you are. I know that that's not popular right now, but it really, really, for me anyway, it was exactly the right way to do it. And and I think I would just like to remind some of the junior workers that they don't have to plan their future by disrupting completely where they are and what they're working on. It's up to them to challenge themselves and maybe their leaders to throw them more, to get more done and to try different stuff.
Kath, those are great comments. That's really good counsel, because I don't know that is the norm so much. My twins are 24, almost 25 years old, and I'm going to pass that on to them today, because I just think it's good counsel, and I think it's always, to go to the next move. Because, by the way, the grass isn't necessarily always greener, right?
Absolutely.
And that can be a hiccup in a career. You think it's a stepping stone, and the next thing you know, you got a problem, right?
Right, and it's really it would really derail your expertise.
Well, Kath, I really appreciate you making the time and doing this today. As always, you have a lot to offer and bring to the party and stir it up. And I know Babcox Media is very grateful for all the great things you did for our company over a lot of years. And I know the industry and the association, I'm sure, feels the exact same way. You've impacted a lot of people in your career, right? And your career may be kind of like mine, inch wide and a mile deep, all automotive aftermarket related. And in your case, you've just really influenced and made an impact on a lot of people, me included in that list. And so I thank you for that, and I'm sure many others would as well.
No, it's nice of you to say, Bill. Thank you.
This podcast is sponsored by Lightens. Lightens, your best source for OE quality automotive and heavy-duty accessory drive tensioning devices. We know tensioners because we invented them.